We all want to feel peace in our lives, peace in our choices, our beliefs, our relationships, and our environment. I've learned that this desired contentment is often found through holding on to less. When we pare down what we own, what we consume, and what we value, we're left with what's intentional, a personalized curation of what is important and true and useful to us. I'm Shannon Leyko, and you're listening to Paring Down, a podcast aimed at helping you declutter not only your home, but any area of your life that's overwhelming. Here, we're having interesting and honest conversations about the physical and mental clutter that drowns out what truly matters to each of us. And together, we'll learn how to pare it all down, not for the sake of perfection or becoming rigid, rather so we can move through life with less overwhelm and more joy, wisdom, and peace. It is a fun week for me, you guys, and that's because our guest today is a good friend of mine, and it is just so fun to share people I personally love with all of you, and you are going to absolutely die for this guest today because Ashli Pollard is so impressive. Everything that she says in this episode is so sticky. And what I mean by that is I told her after we finished recording, I was like, okay, my goal with this podcast is whenever I release an episode, I want it to feel like it has enough, meat on the bones that it sticks to people, that there's something they remember from it, that it's truly helpful. It's not shallow advice that we all kind of know, but it's really the how-tos and new mindsets and things that we can really carry with us that don't feel super obvious, right? Like I hope that's the goal of every podcast, that it brings some level of, true education and helpfulness to the listeners. But that's just something that I really focus on because I think with podcasts, sometimes it can be easy to be like, oh, I'm just going to tell stories or interview this person with no real direction, and people can kind of glean what they do from that. But I just really feel passionately that I'm not going to put something into the world that doesn't stick to you when you listen to it. And everything Ashli says in this episode is so sticky. It's so helpful and practical, and you're gonna love it because we're talking about paring down our priorities. And there's no one better to talk about this than someone who owns 5 companies. This woman has a lot of plates spinning at one time, and it's really helpful to hear how she navigates all the different things in her life. So let me tell you a little bit more about Ashli. We share a little bit about our story of how we know each other when we were both in our early 20s living in New York City. She was working in fashion. I was pursuing Broadway. We were just, putting ourselves out there. And I'm so proud of us both for doing something so wild when we were young and in our 20s. But you'll hear a little bit more about that in just a second. But when Ashli was in New York, she worked for brands like Prada, Gucci, Rebecca Minkoff, Sam Edelman, Hunter Boots, consulting for Kendall and Kylie. I mean, truly some ridiculously huge brands that she helped build with her insight and skill in marketing. Fast forward to 2020, Ashli started the Daily Hype podcast. It hit 400,000 listeners. Okay. And so at that point, her consulting business also took off because brands were like, oh, you've worked with who? Yes, please work with me. And she became a private consultant. So that's when she started this online group called The Doers, where she helps the female entrepreneurs figure out exactly how to actually make income. This isn't like Instagram coaching. This is true crunching numbers, coming up with plans, and helping people realize their dreams in a practical business sense. She also launched her second business, Me Time, in 2022, and then she launched Dial Zero Marketing a year after that. And in their first year, they worked with Brooke Shields, Bethany Frankel, and a bunch of other names that I don't need to keep name dropping because at this point, you get the point. She's like kind of a big deal. Oh, I forgot to mention that she has a podcast production company called Fast Forward. Okay. And all of these different businesses fall under Cocky Ventures, which is her brainchild. So you have Team AP Consulting with The Doers. You have Dial Zero Marketing, which is a marketing agency. You have Fast Forward Productions, and you have Me Time, which is a one-of-a-kind morning routine kit. So a product-based company. So anyway, Ashli's amazing. As you can hear, she's got a lot going on, but there's a reason for it. And it's because she's successful. She's like Midas. Anything she touches turns to gold because she does it with such authenticity, but also she knows what to focus on and prioritize at any given time. And as we pare down our lives, this piece of essentialism is huge. So I just look forward to you learning from her this episode, enjoying her, because her laugh will make you laugh. Like, I promise you will giggle out loud while you're listening to her. You just can't help it. The hardest I've ever laughed in my entire life, I will never forget it because I laughed so hard, was with Ashli Pollard. We were in a car. I'll never forget it. We were going over the Lessener Bridge in Virginia Beach. Vaguely remember what we were laughing about, but she was telling a story, and it was my husband and his best friend and me and Ashli in the car. And I've never laughed that hard in my entire life. So anywho, you're just going to enjoy this on so many levels. So let's dive in with the Ashli Pollard. Ashli, hi. I'm so happy to see you again. It's been a bajillion years.
It's been a bajillion and a half, and I'm furious about it because I love you so much.
I love you so much, and I'm so happy for us right now. What a good morning. What a good day. Okay, so before I get on a tangent of how we know each other, can you introduce yourself to the people and, tell them whatever you want to tell them about yourself?
Yeah, so the spiel is, hi guys, I'm Ashli Pollard. We're now best friends. I spent 11 years in the fashion industry in New York City working for brands like Prada, Gucci, Rebecca Minkoff, Oscar de la Renta, Kendall and Kylie, Sam Edelman, like the list goes on. And in 2020, I had all of these tools about how to properly run a business. And so I created a portal called The Doers where entrepreneurs, solopreneurs can log in and have all of this access to like running a business 101. That kind of like prompted so much time and money and revenue in my business that I said a normal person might take that money and relax. And I said, no, why don't we start 3 more businesses? And so that is what I did. And now we have a podcast production company called Fast Forward. I have a product-based business called Me Time. And then I have what I call my full-time job, which is Dial Zero Marketing, where we work with female brands, specifically mainly like celebrity and influencer product brands. And we do social media, email marketing, branding, et cetera, et cetera. But everything I do is all female teams for women. We don't hate men here. We champion you, but I speak to the girlies. So the girls and the gays is what I say.
Yeah, I feel like if there's a dude listening to this podcast, hi, love you. Also, I am so sorry because I 100% cater to women as well.
Okay, so, I was like, I don't know what your demographic is. I'm not trying to like push anyone out.
It's literally 98% women. I think was the last analytics. Yes. Okay. So everyone should, I feel like, hear at least a little bit of backstory of why we know each other, because Ashli's not like a usual podcast guest for me in the sense that we are getting to know each other in the minimalism space. Ashli and I have known each other for 12 years. And so you will hear that dynamic as we talk. We're friends. Yes, it is true. I started working at Bond in January 2012.
That
12 and a half years ago.
So disgusting. Like, but we're 16. Like, I don't understand. How have we known each other?
We are 16.
We're teenagers.
I know. I can't handle it. So we obviously met in New York when we were both there. Bond is a restaurant, Bond 45, or it was. Did it die, RIP, or is it just in a different location?
It moved to a different location, so now it's next to Hamilton, of all places.
Oh, that's right. I think it's ironic. They took it off 45th Street, so Bond 45 no longer quite makes sense. But anyway, it was a restaurant. We worked there. Weirdly enough, we actually didn't even work there at the same time. No. We just were friends, obviously, with everyone we worked with. And so then we ended up in the same social circle. And it was like a wee bit dramatic when we were in New York together, not by us, but by our friends who were like, mostly dudes who just like to stir the pot, and they're like, you won't like Ashli because she's awesome, and you won't like Shannon because I don't know, they thought we were the same person, so we wouldn't like each other.
They pinned us against each other and neither of us fell for it. I remember specifically we were in Queens at the karaoke bar. I don't know if you remember this specific day, and
I do.
And you were like, everyone wants us to hate each other, but I don't think I hate you. And I was like, I don't think I hate you. And we've been friends ever since.
We put our foot down. We were like, we will not have this. We can't. Right. And then we connected again, I would say, 4 years later, after I'd moved out of New York down to DC and then down to Virginia Beach. And we were both single and we had blogs. And so we were just talking on GChat back when everyone was on GChat. I invited you down, or maybe you suggested coming down to Virginia Beach for 4th of July, and you happened to meet my husband like at the same time I did, essentially.
Yeah.
And he and I got married
I
like
just
4 months
met
later.
Yeah, you were like, I just met this guy like a week ago. Do you want to hang out with him and his friends for 4th of July? And I'm like, all right.
Sure, sounds good. And
Yeah.
then you were at our wedding that
Yeah.
December.
Yeah. And then I gave
So
him the
crazy.
So funny. We've always supported each other. We've always rallied for each other and tried to keep minimally, in touch in a way where we kind of have a semblance of what's going on in people's lives. And I'm so grateful for it.
Me too. It is hard as, you go through different stages of life, and you and I don't live near each other. Like, to me, it's really special. Anybody that I can shoot a text off to as if no time has passed, and we've done that for the last 12 years, like, you're a lifetime friend to me. Like, I don't have time or energy for friends that get mad at you if you can't talk all the time. I'm like, no,
Oh
I
my
need
God.
low maintenance friends in my life. Please.
Yeah, I'm the lowest maintenance. Like, I agree. The thing is, like, we're both so busy. For you, if you're like, catch me up on things, like, we caught up right before this, and I'm like, here are the big things you have to know. Here's the download. Here's what's going on. But no, I love our friendship. I'm very lucky to have a friend like you.
Same here. And I'm just actually really excited to have you on, because not only are you so just important to me on a personal level, but it makes a lot of sense for you to share your wisdom here on the podcast for 2 reasons. A, I wouldn't have a podcast if it wasn't for you. So when I decided I wanted to have a podcast, Ashli was the first person I called, and I was like, what do I do? And she has an entire podcast production company. She is very well versed in like the digital space, and didn't charge me a dime, and was like, here are all the things you need to do. So I appreciate that. And I've passed on so much of the information you've given me to other people who want to start podcasts. So
Good.
I appreciate that. But also, kind of what you mentioned in your intro of yourself, of you have so many different things going on. It's inspiring, because knowing you, or if people follow along on your Instagram, they could see this too. You manage these 5 businesses, 4, how many?
5, yeah.
5 businesses, but then you also really prioritize your family, your friends. You're a big believer in relaxation and restoration, all of those things. And it's kind of like, how does she do it all? You know what I mean? Like, how does she figure this all out? So that's what we're talking about today, is really paring down priorities, because you do have a lot going on. So I want you to be able to kind of share how you make that all happen. And something that's important to me is that I talk a lot about contentment on the podcast. Decluttering and contentment go hand in hand, because, the goal is to feel at peace with where you are, and clutter often drowns out the things that make you feel peaceful. The problem with that, though, is that a lot of people see contentment and they confuse it with complacency, and you're the opposite of a complacent person.
No.
So I'd love to kind of kick this off by, could you kind of tell us what you think contentment looks like for someone who's very ambitious?
So yes, and one thing I like to tell people is that my ambition is not rooted in wanting more, but I have an ethos that I'm like, how do I make this not morbid? Life is so short and can be so long also. And for me, I'm like, let's say this is my only time on this planet. I don't know what happens, after all of this, but like, let's say this is the only time, then I want to have so much fun. Okay. I want to be silly, and I want to play, and I want to test, and I want to try things, and I want to get my hands dirty. And so for me, ambition is really like, I want to try that. What is that like? What does that do? Like, there's like a curiosity and a playfulness in it, where I'm not necessarily wanting like the next accolade or the next dream come true. The reason I have 5 businesses is I'm like, hey, that could be fun. We know how to produce podcasts. What if we offered that service? You know what I mean? Like, it's not like I need that on my resume. So one thing that I kind of like come back to is that I really think ambition is easier when you make it really fun. When you say like, I'm not here to impress anyone, and I'm not here to get the gold, and I don't care if I win anything. I don't care if I'm the best at anything. I just want to have a good time, and I want to be proud of what I do. And so how do I mesh that with contentment? To me, I always tell people, like, I'm an enough girly. I am an enough girl. Do I want a mansion? No, ma'am, because I'll tell you what, all I see are baseboards, and I don't want to be cleaning all of those baseboards. Okay, ma'am? Like, I don't need to be doing that. To me, my main goal, I tell people, is safety and security. I think that wealth through my eyes, which is kind of another point of ambition, is I want a home. I want to be able to take care of my family. I want to be able to spend money on whatever I want to order at dinner that day without picking the $17 item versus the $20 item. And everything after that is just fun. So I also think a lot of this comes down to your goals and who you're trying to impress. And I've done a considerable amount of therapy through the years to release this idea that I'm here to please anybody. And I've made it my main mission that I tell people that I just want to have a silly goose time. I just want to have fun.
Yeah, and you've touched on something that is really important. I just finished Joshua Becker's book, Things That Matter. It's amazing. And in it, he talks about work. Why are we working just for leisure or just so that we can retire early? When in reality, can we find work with purpose? And when we are doing work with purpose, then it doesn't really feel like this cumbersome thing. It doesn't mean it's always easy, but like you said, it's more fun. And so like you take that like fun aspect of it, but I think part of what makes it fun for you is that you have this purpose. You see needs around you, right? You see women in business that you want to see thrive and succeed because you believe passionately in the power of women. You see, let's say, podcasters needing help with that. You're meeting needs with these different businesses, and that is the purpose behind them. And therefore, you're able to kind of find the energy to continue going, because it's not like I'm starting these, like you said, just so I can afford a mansion. While there are monetary securities that are really, valuable, quite literally, the overarching purpose for you, it sounds like, is meeting the needs of people using your skills and passions that you have, and that is going to lead to success. My husband says this to me all the time. Like, I tell him, am I lame that I don't care that I'm not making money on Instagram or with my podcast right now? Like, does that mean I'm just wasting my time? Because sometimes I feel that like pressure, and he's like, how can it be a waste of time if you are meeting a need of people around you and like living into your purpose? Like that's way more valuable than cash in the bank. So I think that your fun aspect of it is really a reflection of your passion and your purpose, and that's amazing.
Thank you. I did not think that. I sometimes think I'm a degenerate who just decided to take up space and is an idiot trying to do the best she can and accidentally fell into this. But I do think that you're right. I don't think I take enough credit for the fact that like I am really trying to fill these gaps. I wouldn't be doing something if I didn't think it wouldn't help in some way. I do think part of it is I take up space when we're messy. We start a business with nothing, and we don't have systems, and we've never had a client, or and we just say let's go and let's do it. But I think that's part of the fun aspect of it, where we let go of, but I don't have my ducks in a row, and it's like, but that's not the point. We want to do it because it's fun and because there's people who want it. I do think you're right. There is definitely purpose involved.
First of all, Ashli, you are a degenerate, obviously. We both are. What are we talking about? Okay. Let's back that up, okay? No, I'm kidding. No, I love that. I love that you don't take yourself so seriously, or that you get a big ego about it, because then you're not helpful either. But yeah, I want to encourage you that it's clear to me that you're fulfilling needs. And on that note, though, this whole idea of working really hard and staying productive, before we dive into the priorities, building out those priorities within it, I'm curious your thoughts on hustle culture, because, there's this fear in my heart that people will burn out, or that hustle culture is like so prevalent online, like just work hard. But it seems like it's just so focused on the consumerist side of it, like what you can buy, the vacations you can go on, all of that kind of thing. So I'm curious for you, what do you think about hustling?
I am big major pro, loud pro hustle culture. And I'm going to tell you why. I think what we see a problem with is expectation connecting to personal fulfillment. I think that burnout happens when there's a disconnect of, this is how I want to live my life, and I'm stuck doing this other thing. I'm not the most artistic, creative person. You put me in front of an easel and you're going to get a stick figure drawing. Do you know what I'm saying? And so if you were to tell me that every day I had to go into a room and paint and express myself with a visual medium, that would be hell. I would not enjoy that, right? And that would be such a disconnect. I would burn out from that, right? And that's not necessarily like Excel spreadsheets, right? I think that a lot of what we see with hustle culture is a disconnect of this is how I want to be living, and I'm stuck doing something else. And maybe that's because of the semblance of rules, or, consumerism being through the roof. And I like to kind of redirect and say, to those of us who are numbers people and love an Excel spreadsheet like I do, and love the technology of like, how do we segment an email list in a really creative way, and those kinds of things, like, why is that not a creative medium or an expressive medium or a skill set that people are allowed to fully encompass, and I, just as much as I want to champion somebody who's like, I want to act and I just want to act and I want to have this medium, or I want to mother and I want to be with my kids all day, I think we do a disservice to people who genuinely feel the similar pull to, I like this like nerdy thing, or I like to work hard, or I like to do this thing. I think the problem is when you're in the wrong space, or if you're in it for the wrong reason. Because I'll tell you what, nobody works harder than me, but a ton of people work less, you know? And for me, that's where I kind of try to strike the middle ground, is like, I work harder than almost anyone I know. And I am excited every single day to get to work. Every single day. I have to peel myself away from work. And I think that's because I'm in a place that is so supported by my skill set and what I want out of my life, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. It really does. I actually really appreciate that perspective, because especially in the space I'm in, the like minimalism, slowing down space, you can kind of vilify hustle culture. But I think you made a really great point that this idea of hustling is usually around entrepreneurship, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And why are we saying that that's not okay to pour yourself into, but like creative arts are? And I think the disconnect there too is that people say, oh, well, if you're doing something in the arts, it's maybe more fulfilling than people see entrepreneurship or business as strictly money makers. But you and I kind of covered that it's not always just about making the money and hustling so that you can have the next best thing. It might just be a medium that you really, really enjoy and allows you to like lean into your purpose and fulfill what you can offer this world.
Mm-hmm.
But it just doesn't look the same as something that's maybe a little bit softer.
Yeah, and I do tend to take a bit of offense to people who say to me specifically, like, you hustle too hard, or, you're doing something that's like just to make money, which is something I hear. And to me, it's really hard for people to not understand how I feel. I'm an Excel girly. I love someone to give me all of the numbers of their business. I see it like a puzzle. I know exactly how to fix it. I have all this, complex formulas memorized. I want to get into these numbers and I want to make sense of it, and I want to create a strategy that's going to work for you. I can't see how that is not a level of creativity and some kind of expression. And I don't think people could get that unless they've done it. It only comes across that I'm doing something maybe masculine because it's money related or there's numbers behind it. And to me, I just think that does a disservice to women, and is probably the reason why we see women having a hard time in entrepreneurship, is because they feel like they should be doing something more expressive when you are able to express yourself through business.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And this links also to productivity. I would say that productivity, especially in the last couple of years, has kind of gotten a bad rap. Like, oh, you shouldn't just live life to be productive. But, another concept that came from this book, Things That Matter, obviously it's top of mind since I just read it, though, is like we actually will be way more fulfilled in life if we are productive, if we're productive towards the right things. We're not just running ourselves into the ground, but in fact, we're working toward something that gives our life meaning. And we should want to wake up and work hard every day of our lives. We shouldn't want to just turn everything off when we turn 65 years old and just wait until we die by reading books and sitting on a beach. Like, productivity is powerful, not only for our internal lives and selves and self-worth, but also then how we can improve the world around us. Productivity is not a bad thing. And I think the pendulum has swung too far into saying just do self-care all day, every day, instead of saying part of self-care is finding something that you love and working hard at that and seeing the
Mm-hmm.
results. I mean, that is a really, really powerful notion. I am curious too, then, how you take that passion for work and that love for work, but then figure out your priorities, not only within your own 5 businesses, but you are a very dedicated aunt. I love seeing pictures of you and your nephew. And then you're a very dedicated daughter. You're an amazing friend. You have a lot going on besides just business. So let's dive into a little bit of this prioritization from someone like you who has so much going on. So on a practical level, let's just start there. Is how do you decide on any given day what to prioritize? Like, do you have a time management system that you use?
Girl, do I have a time? Yeah, like a crazy person. Okay. First of all, I do have a system in my head of like a hierarchy. Family is number one. If my sister needs me, if my mom needs me, if my brother needs me, which people tend to forget about because he's not on my social really, but
No, sorry, you also have a brother. I only ever think about Jamie.
I know I have a brother and he has 3 kids, and so if someone in my family, if a cousin, if an aunt, if an uncle, if someone in my family needs me and I have a meeting, bye, I'm cancel. I don't care how it affects my business. I don't care if you're upset with me. I don't care if you blow up a TikTok about how I'm disrespectful. I'm with my family right now. So that is just bar none, a non-negotiable. The other one is, I would say the second one is myself. I think the most productive thing you can do is rest. I am an avid player of The Sims. I love reality television. I love to cook. I love to be alone in silence and just like decompress. And so I think that's also important. But, a tip for like how truly do I build out prioritization? I mean, I'm a broken record if anybody's ever heard me anywhere else, but it's really these 2 things. One is the Eisenhower matrix. It is the backbone of everything. Have you heard of the Eisenhower matrix?
I don't think so.
It's going to change your life. This is how I have a life and work. And I could get into the whole nuance of like work-life balance and how I think that's a messed up situation, whatever. But like, to me, the Eisenhower matrix, the way that it's set up is that it's a matrix of 4 different quadrants, and you prioritize it to urgent and important, urgent, not important, important, not urgent, not important, not urgent, right? And
okay, wait, yes, I have heard of this. I just didn't know that's what it was called.
Okay, great. That's the Eisenhower matrix. And so I also, fun fact, I don't know if you know this, I don't know if people know this, but I actually have like a really bad memory issue. So I have to use a project management software. I've always had some semblance of a project management software, like even in my career, because I don't trust myself to remember everything. Everything has to go into a software or to a phone or to a handwritten something. So I've always needed some sort of system of like keeping track of everything. And so what I do is I kind of use this like color coding system. Everything goes into my Airtable, which is the project management system I use. Everything goes in. I have it on my iPad. I have it on my cell phone. I have it on my computer. I always have a tab open. Anytime I think of a to-do list item, I put it in my Airtable. I color code it for urgent, urgent, not important, important, not urgent, or not important, not urgent, with a duration attached to it. So my goal is that urgent means like I have to get this done today. And my goal is that only 4 things live there. More than 4, it's not urgent anymore. You've now diluted urgent to where it can't be, right? Only 4 things can be urgent and important. And then I go into the next tier and the next tier and the next tier, where it's basically like, this has to be done today, this has to be done this week, this has to be done this month, this has to be done at some point. And every day I'm kind of remaneuvering things. If I tell, myself, oh, I can do this at the, in a couple weeks, someone reaches out and says, hey, wait, no, we actually need that. Okay, well, then we have to rejigger some things. So the Eisenhower matrix is a great place for me to manage a hierarchy of importance. And I think the duration is one of the bigger aspects of this because, and I don't give myself, oh, I could totally get that done in 15 minutes. I'm like, but it could take 30. So let's hold 30, because then in my software or in my brain or wherever I'm writing it down, I can see I have 8 hours of urgent things. Like that's just not possible, right? So how do I want to rejigger some of these things? Or do I want to give this to someone else? Or do I want to drop this and say it's actually not that important at all? So that's one thing. The second thing that I really love is this idea of glass plates and paper plates. Have you heard me talk about this?
A little bit, yeah. Do share.
So glass plates and paper plates is this idea that like something if you drop something, if something is forgotten, overlooked, a mistake is made, if you drop it, does it shatter and now you're hurting people because people have to walk on it? Or is it a paper plate that like slowly drifts to the ground and it doesn't break and you can pick it right back up? So the idea is to kind of take a look at like every single day saying no to something. What's a glass plate and what's a paper plate? A great example of that is one of my girlfriends wrote me and said, "Hey, are we still on to go to the pool today?" Literally today, the day we're recording. And she said, "We're still going at noon, right?" Well, we have this podcast scheduled and I forgot that I told my friend I would go to the pool with her. And so what's a glass plate? What's a paper plate? And how do I quickly analyze how I can handle a situation where I have two things involved? I could say, well, shoot, I guess I can't go to the pool. Or, oh, I guess I have to cancel on Shannon. Instead, I said to my friend, I won't be able to go to the pool until 30 minutes after this episode. I'm going to have to do a couple things with work and then I'll meet you there. So it's like, how do I manage these plates that are always dropping? And how do I quickly analyze what is going to hurt me in a way that it's hard to come back from? And what is going to be something that I can quickly pick back up? You know, if I have to reschedule with a client, is that client going to be angry and leave? Or are they going to say, "Oh my gosh, I'd love the time back. I'll see you Monday." So that's kind of two of my major tips, the Eisenhower matrix and analyzing that glass plates versus paper plates.
Those are such good, practical, visual ways to remember how to create a priority system. I love them. And I feel like they can relate even if it's not in business. Like I'm thinking with like my
100%.
stay-at-home mom hat on. I mean, even though I'm not, I could go on a tangent about the phrase stay-at-home mom, and I'm also
Great.
not just a stay-at-home mom, but I'm thinking about like my mom hat is like if, let's say, we forgot that there's an event at school. It's book fair at 6 o'clock, and it's 5 o'clock, and the kids haven't eaten yet, and I had planned to make X, Y, and Z for dinner, and now I don't have time, and I'm stressed, right? Like, what is the paper plate? What is the glass plate? Like, for me, a paper plate is like what you're serving your kids. Okay, fine. Pop in some chicken nuggets in the microwave. Like, they'll be fine, right? Or even if you don't have something you're running off to get to and it's not like a physical, like a scheduling item, if you're stressed out the wazoo because you've had a really, really hard day with the kids and you are going to try and make dinner, what is more important from a parenting priority? Is it that you feed your kid this perfect meal, or is it that you don't snap at your kid to the point that they are going to need therapy over it when they grow up? I mean, I'm of the mindset all kids are going to need therapy over what their parents did, no matter how hard we try.
I agree.
But
Yeah.
it's like, okay, in that moment, I'm stressed out. What do I choose here? I choose to be kind to my kids, and what's going to help me be kind to my kids is making a box of macaroni and cheese. You know what I mean? Like that to me is a paper plate versus glass plate. Like you said, is it going to harm myself or others if I let it drop? Big picture. So those are really, really awesome. And I'm curious what you would say to someone who says, like, I have all these things I want to accomplish. Maybe they are actual obligations like you have that are already in play, or there's someone like me who's like, I want to write another book, and I just just in my newsletter, and maybe I want to do a second episode per week of the podcast, and I want to do this, I want to do that, right? And I'm like, there's just not enough time in the day to accomplish everything. What would you say to someone like that? How do I decide what to accomplish, or what do I do?
I have a couple thoughts there. I would say one is a little bit more applicable or like actionable, and the other one is a bit more like ethos. My ethos feedback would be the way that I see things. Okay, I get questions a lot. Why haven't you done a TED Talk yet? Why haven't you done a TED Talk yet? Like, you should do a TED Talk. And what I tell people is I'm collecting those stories right now. Like, I'm collecting my TED Talk today. I don't want to do it today. This story is going to be a part of it. This chapter will be a part of it. So I want to do that TED Talk in like 5 years from now. And if that feels too far away, that version of me in 5 years, she deserves something. I don't want to have everything. Like, that future me deserves a win. She deserves to have a good time. She deserves like something she's stepping into. So I think sometimes we rob ourselves in the future, right? Like almost in our heads. In our heads, we're almost like, I need to do this today and this today and this next month and this in the next 3 months. And it's like, we can win later in different things, a good example, not to put you on the spot, but like writing a second book, like that can happen in 2 years, and that's gonna fly by. I mean, we haven't seen each other in God knows how long, and I feel like I've just hugged you like 5 minutes ago. Do you know what I mean? So, there's a world where I want us to think a little bit about how the life can be long for some of us, right? Where it's like, allow ourselves some of these moments in the future to win then, right? I want to open up a restaurant. I want to write a book one day. I want to build a house. And maybe I do that when I'm 55, and maybe I write a book when I'm 60, and that's fine. I think that not everything has to be done today, or we're just going to bury ourselves in shame and rid future us of a version of ourselves that gets to do something new and fresh and exciting. So that's my ethos one before we move on to the more actionable one, unless you want me to move on to the actionable one.
I want you to continue to share, but I just want to stop and say that is just the most beautiful mindset and frame of mind. Like I'm going to remember, that's going to be something that I remember forever, is
Oh
like,
my
let
gosh.
future me succeed. I mean, that's beautiful. Like you said, I mean, I just started my newsletter this past week, and I've been wanting to write a newsletter for the last 2 years, and it felt so exciting the last 2 weeks. And I have had such a clearer picture of how I wanted to do it and what I wanted to include and all of that. And so it's like, I'm glad I waited until now. And anyways, thank you for sharing that. Super powerful. Let's
An
keep going.
example of that also is Me Time is one of my businesses. It's a product that's like focused around morning journaling, morning meditation. It's have a moment for yourself is the tagline. I launched it in 2022 or 2021, and my goal was that this was my future. This is my mission. And we haven't done anything with it for a year. We've kind of like redesigned the product, redesigned the website, and people all the time are like, God, I wish you were still doing that. And I tell people all the time, oh, I am still doing that, but like maybe 3 years from now. And they're like, oh, you don't think it'll be too late then? And my answer is, who cares? I'm not doing it today. I can do it later, and that's fine. So allow yourself like to grow into things too. So that, just to close that one up. The more actionable piece of this, I'm going to go back to that plates analogy, glass plates, paper plates. Go with me on like a kind of funny analogy here, is that, let's say, warning, let's say you're a clown in a circus. Okay. I know. And you don't have to be a clown in the circus. You could just be a person who, I don't know, balances plates. Let's say you have a plate that you're balancing, and you've never balanced a plate before, and you're like trying to balance it. It's wobbling all over the place. You have to stay so singularly focused on this one thing so it doesn't drop. That might be the beginning of a career. That might be the beginning of motherhood. That might be moving to a new state. That might be anything. Everything's off kilter. You have to have your sole focus on this one thing. There comes a time when you either master something or things just level out, and now it's just spinning. You can look away, you can have a conversation. At that point, add a second plate, right? Because that one's going to wobble, and now you're going to be off kilter again because you've never done the two before. And then it's like, okay, well, then that will, level out, and then balance it on your nose, and then balance it on your shoulders, or whatever it is. So it's like, I also think from a tactical standpoint, it behooves us to consider the fact that, like, when things are working in some semblance of normalcy, introducing something new will set things a bit off kilter because you haven't had that calendar, that schedule, or that type of lifestyle before, whatever the change is. So allow it to kind of like be a bit unbalanced, and have the patience to know this is going to level out. But I would recommend, even in someone who started 5 businesses, we did kind of wait until there was a level of equilibrium to like announce the next one. And so that's just a bit more of like a tactical piece of it.
Yeah, no, that makes a perfect sense. You like build one on top of the other, so you don't just come crashing down. You're like, I know that I'm steady already before I bring this another thing into the picture. And on that note, there are certain things that maybe we can't control as much when it comes to our priorities, and that usually is other people, relationships. So what would you advise someone who, let's say, is adding a new relationship or a new dynamic of a relationship into their lives. They are
Mm,
becoming an aunt. They are having another child. Maybe their kids are coming home for the summer. That's a new dynamic, right? And all of a
sure.
sudden, instead of being able to prioritize things the way you did during the school year, you now have to consider your kids in different times of day. What do you advise people when it comes to prioritizing your relationships versus those kind of more steady work obligations?
Yeah, I hear you. I try to remind people that like although we've lived with ourselves for how many years? I mean, obviously we're teenagers.
I'm only
Teenagers.
I'm only 16.
I'm only 16. I'm not 36. But like, although I've known myself for 36 years, I don't know the version I am next month. I've never met her. I've never met the version of myself who exists next year. So I always try to tell people like we can't make a ton of decisions for our future selves because we don't know her. We don't know them. So give yourself grace as you meet that version of yourself. And it might be okay, but this is happening next week. Right. But like, have you met the version of yourself that's had to feel that way or operate differently? Right. So if you were to meet someone new who was going through something, maybe your friend was like, hey, my friend's going through something. We're going to go to happy hour. Would she come and you would be like, gosh, you're so stupid that you're going through this thing? Or, oh my gosh, why aren't you stronger? This is not even that hard, or whatever it is, right? You would say, I don't know you, and so I'm extending you grace, and I hope you feel safe, and I want you to feel like you're allowed to feel these things. So I think first and foremost is kind of speak to yourself as if you would be speaking to a stranger, because if this is a new situation for you, you are a stranger to yourself. This is a dynamic that you haven't yet been introduced to and will probably change the way that you act within your life, even with yourself, with a partner, with a family member, with a team, etc. So you're meeting someone new, even though you've known this person for 20, 30 years. So I think that's one piece of it. The other thing is, I think that you kind of, depending on the way that you're living your life, someone like me who I'm running a business or who I'm in a higher position in a business, if maybe someone listening is that I do think vulnerability is kind of the way through. My sister went through a very traumatic situation a couple of years ago that I'm not going to share I think but like I'm not going to share the story. It's not mine. And I was running a business. I had a very engaged membership of 100 people. And I called a Zoom link or a Zoom meeting and I was crying and I said, this is what's going on. I need to take a pause. I can either refund you guys the money or I can make up for it another time. I apologize. This is important to me. And they said to me, take a month. We're chilling for a month. We're cool. We're fine. And I think I had to do that. I think I had to share what was honestly going on. I had to tell my clients, I'm going to not charge you for the next month because I need to take a minute. If you leave the roster, it is what it is. And I stopped posting on social for 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And I didn't shame myself through any of that. I knew I could pick it back up. I knew that I could get back into it. Now that's a trauma situation. So I hope I didn't, jar anybody. But my point there is I think that also as you weave new situations into your life, you have to have the vulnerability of saying, hey, this is kind of coming up for me and I haven't experienced that before. Can we talk through that? Or, hey, I'm going through this and I'm going to need some grace. So I think that honesty and that transparency is probably one of the harder parts of that type of situation, but I think that's kind of how you get through it.
Yeah, both of those things resonate really deeply. What I'm hearing that first piece is that we won't be able to perfectly nail our priorities all the time. As we figure out, as new things come in and we're shifting around, we have to give ourselves grace that it might take a second for us to figure out how to balance it all. And that's okay. Like if you just don't know exactly where your priorities are falling, or maybe you logically do, but your schedule does not add up the way you would like it to, like it's okay to be human and just keep trying to adjust to make those priorities match the best you can. And then that second piece of their vulnerability, I cannot possibly love that more and also second that, because I've done the same thing. Being vulnerable in the workplace, I think should be more commonplace. You know what I mean? It's like we're people. Like companies are run by people. Work is done by people. Or just even I think about like on Wednesday nights, I lead a small group for my church, and I lead it with another woman, and so we kind of do every other week. But there have been times that I'm like, hey, Mary, I can't do it this week. Like I have too much going on and I'm
Mm-hmm.
not able to, and leaning on her, and it's no problem. And in turn, that allows her to be vulnerable with me when she's going through a hard time and being like,
Sure.
hey, would you be able to cover for me this week? Or talking to my boss that I currently have right now. I work part-time for a couples therapist, and we've had really vulnerable conversations about, even when I added on paring down and this entire podcast and business, about how does this look for my creative juices as a whole that I used to only have for Tracy and her
Mm-hmm.
content that I'm helping? Like, what does that look like? And it was great because she was able to share with me her concerns. I could share with her what was most meaningful to me, and we could have an honest conversation about what that looks like. It doesn't mean that my work changed for her at all, but we both feel like we're in a better place with it because we understand maybe like more so what I'm going through, and I understand what she's going through watching her person add a creative outlet into her life. And so yeah, I think that vulnerability piece is huge.
You know, welcoming a new child, obviously I haven't done that, so tread lightly, listeners, because I don't want to offend anyone with an experience I haven't had yet. But there might be things that were so important, that were glass plates, that maybe you say, you know what, for right now they're paper. Like, fine, maybe we don't vacuum every Friday, we vacuum once a month. Or maybe we do order in, even though that's been a rule that we're trying to save money, so we're not, right? So it's also kind of knowing what glass plates have now converted into paper because we're going through a change in life.
Right, we're different people. Our what
Different
really
people.
matters to us can change, and that's
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
For the sake of time, I'm going to dive into these two questions I ask everyone at the end. And the first one is, what is something that you are currently paring down? It can be something physical that you're kind of getting rid of, or it can be an idea or a concept that you're trying to get to the bottom of.
Well, God, what a great question. I feel like I'm just in such a state of minimalism to the max, because I've been moving and moving and moving and moving. And every time I move, I'm like, get rid of it, get rid of it, get rid of it, like, get rid of it. And I feel like everything I have now has such purpose. And I really moved into this house with almost nothing except for a few things. And so, in kind of rebuilding my home, I have said that I don't care how long it takes to create a space that feels cozy to me. Everything is going to matter. And I'd rather that be the movement than having stuff. I can't go through stuff anymore. And no offense to anyone, I'm not trying to judge, but so for me, do I really need all of these books, or do I want the ones that I know I'll come back to and I can donate the rest? Or do I need art on the walls because it was cute at Hobby Lobby? Or do I want to pick something up every time I visit a new, place, and put together some sort of wall of different memories? So I think that has been a really nice, almost like identity work situation. Is like, I really wanted a beautiful home, and now I almost want like a home that reflects like a scrapbook of my life. So I have to live to fill this house versus shop.
Oh, I love that. That is the way to do it. I think that is very, very wise. And you're
Seal of
paring
approval.
down. I'm like, okay, how do I put this in a sentence? I think you are paring down the individuality of your home, decor, and all of that. That would be my assessment. Okay, what is something that you are looking forward to right now?
Oh my gosh, the amount of things I'm looking forward to. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if people are interested in my career things. I mean, I am really looking. I mean, I've been working so hard the past 4 years, and I've been working so hard in a blind pursuit of hoping all of this works. And like, I tell people, like, walking blindly through a blizzard and knowing that there is something at the end of the tunnel, but having no idea if that's true. And I feel like the last 6 months, the storm is really lifting, and I'm kind of able to take the blindfolds off, and everything is there that I wanted, which has been just so validating, that I trudged through all of this and sacrificed so much for something that's actually working. We are building a business to sell. We started the business to have an asset that's sellable, and it looks like we're moving in that direction. And I have a team that I'm obsessed with, and we're doing this like beautiful office build out in New York. And I think that what feels good is I'm like, okay, it's all coming together. I can breathe, and I can let go of the steering wheel a bit, and the team's got it, and I can live my life even more and even more and even more. So I know there's probably a boring answer. That's a hustle culture answer, but that's definitely like a big win for me.
Literally the least boring answer. I think that is a beautiful thing that you are looking forward to as, like a big picture for your life is,
Mhm.
making these dreams come true. And to know that it's right around the bend is a really exciting prospect. Okay.
Yes.
And where can everyone find you? I know you have like a bajillion different businesses, but
Yeah.
where should we follow along?
The easiest place to follow along is just on my personal page. It would be Ashli, ASHLI_P. You can find all my businesses in the bio there so that if you're an entrepreneur or a small business owner, you can follow me one place. If you are, on a big marketing team and you want support, you could find me at Dial Zero. If you're looking for investment money, you can find me at Cocky Ventures. Like it's just, we're all over the place. So it's probably easier to follow me personally, and then you can be diverted into all of the different directions from there.
I love that. And you're just fun to follow personally too. So
Thanks.
love that for everyone who's going to get that all your little nuggets of insight. So, okay. I love you. I'm so sorry that we have to go. I mean, technically we've already like filled up our time on the podcast, but I also just want to keep talking to you forever. But alas, my babysitter has to go home. So
Yes.
I'm going to rock and roll, but thank you so much for being here, Ashli. I just love you forever and your wisdom knows no bounds.
Thank you so much for having me. Honestly, I could just like squeeze you through the screen. And guys, everyone who's listening, go rate and review Shannon's podcast because she's a baller and I know how hard you're working and I just want to shout you out.
Thanks. Yes, please leave a review. Okay. All right. Bye. You just listened to an episode of Paring Down with me, Shannon Leyko. If you enjoyed the show, it would mean the world if you can leave a review wherever you listen and share this episode with a friend. Those reviews really are what keeps a podcast on its feet for the long haul, and I will read every single one with a huge smile on my face. So thank you ahead of time. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe. Also, be sure to follow along on Instagram at paring_down, where I offer lots of tips and inspiration for paring down, along with what's new here on the podcast. Till next time.